lineup changes over in Europe?
I guess for me and the caster team here, the biggest change was that Elements finally decided to get a good support player. Crepo is no longer on the lineup. He's joined us on the caster desk, and that's super awesome for everyone here. We are very hyped to see what he can do, and I've already enjoyed my time with him the first few days. He's taking a lot of pictures of me. It's kind of weird, but I love the insight he brings to the team. But when you then look, I guess, at the serious stuff, the teams here in the EULCS, for me, we have to start with Gambit Gaming and the fact that they now have Forgiven as an AD carry, because that's a massive change. Pinoy and Eddie, they didn't look too good together in the laning phase, and that was a big problem for Gambit, especially if you look at like the playoffs. Forgiven, we know he's going to change that completely. He's a lane dominant player. He's probably the best in Europe when it comes to purely laning phase. Him and Eddie together can be a very dangerous 2v2 lane. We do have to see though how the Gambit lineup will work, because Forgiven used to play this 1-3-1 setup in SK Gaming like every single game, where he was just focused on like being better individually than the other players, beat them in laning phase, push every single lane. Gambit can do the same style with Capochard top because he's such a good laner as well. But I want to see which style they decide to use here in the start of the LCS. And then we can go on to number 2. I just mentioned how Crepo was no longer on Elements. They picked up a new support because they are my number 2 big roster move here in Europe. Completely new lineup. It is once again built around Froggen. No real surprise, I guess. We've seen it time and time again. It's a bunch of hungry players with a lot of experience. If you look at Dexter, we look at Taps. Even JWoww has now been in the LCS. He's been around the pro scene for quite some years. And I want to see what this team can do, because it is a bit of a... it's hard to call the last chance, but it's a chance for Dexter and Taps to really show they deserve to be in the LCS still. We have seen them time and time again. I also want to see how Froggen and Taps work together, because when they played on Alliance in Season 4, they made it to Worlds. And it was a good mix of 2 smart players, where Froggen was the more passive-minded, and then Taps wasn't afraid to make some big plays if needed. I want to see if they can find that synergy again between these 2 players. And then, of course, we have to see what the new support Promiscu can do. He's laning with Taps. That's a good start, because Taps is very smart in the laning phase. He wants to dictate the pace as well. He wants to be the guy deciding what to do. That's perfect for new solo queue support, who has some good mechanics. Question is, though, Promiscu outside the laning phase. I mean, it is one thing playing solo queue. Another thing is stepping straight into the LCS. He's never played any pro tournaments. We have to see. It's a bit of a wild card for me. But then looking at the number 1 big roster move here, or thing we want to look at, is going to be Fnatic. I mean, all the hype is on Fnatic with the performance at MSI, but we are looking at Reckless joining the team here. He's replacing Steelback as the AD carry, obviously, and it is an upgrade in every way possible, honestly. I feel like Reckless is just a better AD carry, and it was like the weakest position for Fnatic. Like, if you look at their setup, they have a great coaching staff behind them. The team seems to work really well. There were questions often about Steelback and his performance in the laning phase. That should be somewhat fixed now with Reckless. We just have to see how they decide to play the map, because Reckless is not the same kind of like supportive, laid-back AD carry who just focused on trying to clean up team fights like Steelback did. Reckless is a lot more focused on getting farm. He wants attention. He wants to be a carry. And that's not a thing they needed beforehand when they had Febiven, they had Huni. So you have to see how they manage to use 3 big carries on a team, and if they can manage to get the synergy working. Because if they do click, I think it's very safe to say that Fnatic should have a spot at Worlds and would be such a fantastic team to watch.
Perfect. Great stuff, Deficio. As always, lots of changes as we see. And thank you for joining us. We'll be watching tomorrow to see how Crepo does in his debut.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome to see what he can do and see what the rest of the EULCS teams can do.
We'll be watching. All right, let's check.